Hello and welcome to this lesson on Rubber Hose 2. Now, Rubber Hose 2 is an excellent tool for creating quick rigs that don't need all of those bells and whistles that Morgan's been teaching you throughout this course. Now, this isn't going to be a hugely robust rigging tool, but Rubber Hose 2 has a lot of improvements from the original Rubber Hose 1. You can now do more complicated things like actually rigging up multiple pieced artwork, shape layers with like a lot of detail on them, or even using puppet pins on raster artwork that's been pre-composed. So Rubber Hose 2 is very powerful, but we're just going to skim the surface and I'm going to give you the very basics of creating these rubber hose arms on Mr. Noodles here. Now, again, this is the most basic thing that you can do with rubber hose, but I just want to show you how quick and easy it is to use this particular plugin for After Effects. Now, you can see I have Rubber Hose 2 loaded up over here in this panel. And let's just check out Mr. Noodles here really quick and see what kind of animation we've got on him. So you can see we have this kind of nice, soft, bendy arm going on here as he's swinging and hitting that ball off the screen. And even his tail is moving a little bit, and that's also created with a rubber hose, and it has that kind of nice bendy look to it. So this is super easy to achieve with this particular script here. Now, let's take a look at how we actually can create this bendy arm very quickly using rubber hose. So let's jump over to Mr. Noodles, and you can see he's kind of down an arm right now, poor little guy, and he's missing his tail. So we are going to fix that really quickly here. Now, I have shied a bunch of layers, and as you can see, these are Illustrator layers. If I unshie everything, you can see he's made up of a bunch of different pieces and parts here. So we're just going to focus on this left front paw here, which is the little toes on him that we're going to use. And this is going to be kind of our right front paw, like our template arm here. So I want to kind of line this up as best as I can on this other side. So I'm just going to duplicate this layer and I'm going to scale it in the negative really quick. So we have negative 100 and I'm just going to drag this over. And it's, not quite perfect. So we're just going to rotate this really quick. Kind of get it positioned up a little bit better. My anchor point's a little wonky here. So let's just move this up to the top and kind of rotate his arm over. Let's get this into position. So this is just like a template guide here that I want to use so I can line this up a little bit better. All right, so this is roughly the positioning of Mr. Noodle's arm that I want. So let's actually create a hose. Now, I'm not going to be using this artwork here for the hose. Again, this is just a template so I can see where this is going to go. Now, to create a rubber hose, you're going to come to Rubber Hose 2 and you're going to type in the name. So we're going to call this left or L arm. And I want this to be a shoulder wrist. Now, this is going to name your controller pairs. So you can see we have a bunch of different choices, but in our case, shoulder wrist makes the most sense. And then I'm just going to click this button right here that says New Rubber Hose. And you can see we've got a hose right here. So let's solo this really quick and take a look at it. We need to solar our controllers and this shape layer. So now we have the whole thing soloed. So this is created with a couple of different things. We have this wrist controller right here. And this is what we're going to use actually to do the animating. And we have a shoulder control. And this is what we're going to parent to the body of Mr. Noodles later on. And we actually have the L arm, which you can kind of see it. Let me change this color really quick and make this a little easier to spot. So this is just like a guide path here. We don't have to worry about this guide path though. So the arm piece is actually just a shape layer in After Effects that's been generated by Rubber Hose. Now you're not stuck with just this one style. I'll show you more of that in a little bit. So let's unsolo all of this stuff and let's actually get this arm into place on Mr. Noodles. So again, we want to move this wrist control, and you can see this is kind of like springy, and it stretches all over the place. So when you see this blue highlight, that means this thing is stretched over max, so it's going to be kind of completely straight. So let's place Mr. Noodles' wrist here, and let's grab the shoulder and put it here. Now this hose is obviously way long. It's not lining up at all. So we need to go back into this wrist controller, and this is where all of the effects are going to be for it. So I'm going to lock my panel really quick so we can stay on this wrist if I click on something else. Now I'm going to change a few options here. So we have this hose length, and this literally just determines the length of the hose. You can see as I kind of really max this out, it just blows out real big, or we can just shrink it down a bit. And you notice that Mr. Noodles, he's bending the wrong way, and this isn't right. So we can change our bend direction. And all you have to do that is type in a negative value in front of this 100, and boom, his little arm snaps into place, which is really handy. And we also have this bend radius. Now, this changes. You can see what's going on here a little bit. Let me bring up the hose. You can see that this is making this corner sharper or smoother depending on how much of this we kind of play around with. Now, obviously, you don't want to max it out too much or you get this kind of reverse thing unless that's what you're going for. But in our case, we're just going to leave this completely soft. But that's where you want to change the actual curve to it to make it firmer or softer of a bend and more elbow-like or hinge-like versus the soft curve that we're looking for on Mr. Noodles here. So let's bring this back down. All right, so now that we've got Mr. Noodles kind of basically into place here, let's actually change this stroke so that it matches up. Now, I am going to come in and I'm going to put a multiply on this so I can see beneath and line this up a little bit better than what we've got now. Now, to change my stroke width, make sure you're selected on the actual shape layer. And you can just come up here and let's play around with the stroke width and get it as close as we can. We're going to have to fiddle around with these controllers, really try and get them in. Maybe a couple more points on here. Probably a 50. Yes, 50. It's always good to use nice, round, even numbers so that you can easily figure out what something should be later on. All right, so now we've got his noodle arm in place, and we need to actually change the color, which is just determined by the stroke. So we can just come in, color pick this, and hit OK. Now I'm going to take the multiply off of here, and I'm just going to delete that template layer that we had for the arm. This is what happens when you don't name things properly. You have to dig a little bit, but we figured it out. All right, so now we have Mr. Noodle's arm actually done here and kind of just sitting in front of him, but we need to put his paw on there. So let's actually parent his front paw. We'll bring it up above the arm, first of all. I'm just going to throw it up above all the controllers and everything so it looks correct. And then we're just going to parent this to the wrist control. Now, when we move this around, we have a paw that moves. Check it out. Pretty cool. Now, one more thing I want to point out on this is this auto rotate end. Now, if I uncheck this box, you can see his paw flips around and it's no longer rotating in kind of this orientation with where that paw is pointing. So if you want your hands to rotate or whatever's attached to kind of auto rotate as you're animating, you are going to want to use this auto rotate end feature. And now we have Mr. Noodle's arm all rigged up and ready to animate. See how easy that was? Now let's give Mr. Noodles a tail really quick. So we will just create a brand new hose, and I'm going to call this tail. And we are going to come in and give this a start and end this time instead of a wrist and shoulder. So we've got a new hose built. Now, this time we're going to do something a little bit different. So let's get his tail kind of stuck behind the cat, roughly the way that we want it to be. Maybe I want to make this just a bit longer, just a little bit. And we'll just kind of stick this end up here. All right, and let's move his tail behind him because right now it's sitting on top, which doesn't look right. And I'm going to give this a different color so I know that these are all together. And we'll jump this down. And obviously we're not getting down far enough because we had a bunch of stuff shied. So we need this to go way, way, way down here below all of his little cat pieces. So now the tail is in the proper place. I can come back in and shy everything again. And this time I want to actually have a bit of a taper, because if you look at Mr. Noodles here, see how this stroke is tapered? Well, there's a cool and easy way to do that with rubber hose. We are going to go into style, and you can see there's a bunch of different styles here. So you can use different things like the two-tone or the tracksuit, or you can make your own custom styles and export them. So we're not going to get into that much detail, but I want to show you one of these with the tapered hose. So with our hose selected, we're going to select tapered hose, and we are going to apply this style. And you can see we now have a tapered hose on Mr. Noodles, which is really cool. This is one of those things that's kind of tricky to pull off with After Effects unless you have certain scripts getting an actual tapered hose going. So we actually have a tapered hose now, and you can play around with the actual width of it to make it thicker or thinner. You can give him a really big, giant, bushy tail, or you can kind of tone that down a bit. We also have a taper percentage, which messes around with the actual amount that it's tapered. So I just had it at default when I did Mr. Noodles originally. And you can add a butt cap on here, which you can't see, but I will solo his tail again so you can get a clear look at that. So our butt cap actually just clips this rounding on the one end. That's all that it's really doing. So we'll uncheck that because we don't really need it. And now we have a tapered stroke on Mr. Noodles ready to animate. All right, let's jump back over to animated Mr. Noodles here and check out some of these options in a little bit more depth with an actual animation going on. So the first thing that I wanted to show you guys is this bend radius again, and let's actually play around with it and get Mr. Noodles to have an elbow. That's a little too much. There we go. So now you can see that Mr. Noodles no longer has that cute little bendy arm. He's got more of an elbow, and I can even crank this up probably a little bit more. Yeah. I mean, it's a little bit knotty there, but you can dial it in however you want to. There we go. So let's play around with that. So you can see that it's got more of like a jointed elbow to him now. Now, you'll notice that his arm sort of foreshortens a bit, and it's a little bit exaggerated here. Now, this is where realism is going to come into play. So if we crank up this realism, you can see that we're maintaining more of that hose length, and it's changing the look of that animation. Now you can see his arm is staying in this flipped position a little bit longer. Now all of these options are keyable, and you can see that I had to change my bend direction. Now when I didn't have the realism turned up in that bend radius, the point of flip was actually fine, but now it's really obvious and he looks a little bit broken. But you can key that bend direction to keep this kind of stuff from happening. So let's change Mr. Noodles back to how he was with his nice soft noodly arm. And that realism turned down to 0, and you can see that's a totally different look, and now Mr. Noodles looks like he should again with his cute little noodly arms swinging away at that ball. Now, the last thing that I want to mention is if you mess up when you are naming something, do not come in and actually hit the enter key and try to rename it, because you will get a big old error and things will just completely die on you. To rename something in Rubber Hose, you need to go into Manage, and you need to click this Rename Hose group. You only have to be selected on one of these, not all of them. And you can change it to whatever you need to. So I'm just going to call this L arm, and we'll rename this. And you can see it renamed all of those components very easily for me. Again, this is all done with expressions, so if you try to change the naming of a layer, it will just completely fail on you. So don't do that. All right, so that brings us to the end of our very, very short lesson on Rubber Hose. I hope that you got to see just how cool this particular tool is and got a taste of some of the things that you can do with it very quickly without needing to go in and create a Duik rig. Now, if you want to learn more about rubber hose, we're going to link to the actual website here where you can download this tutorial project and learn more about the features like rubber rig and rubber pin that allow you to handle more complicated artwork that might have multiple pieces to it, or even raster-based work that's been pre-composed that you can use puppet pins on to get this same kind of effect very quickly. So that's it. I hope you enjoyed this lesson, and I'll see you next time.